My mother didn't whisper it. She said it loud enough for the entire room to hear, "I wish you were never born." Conversations snapped shut. Glasses stopped midair. Even the music seemed to choke, and I just stood there feeling every pair of eyes swing toward me, waiting to see if I would crumble like they always assumed I would. But something else rose instead, something that had been silent for years. I lifted my head, ready to answer her in a way no one expected, because the moment she tried to erase me was the moment I learned a truth she never wanted me to know. I grew up in a two-story house on a quiet street in Rochester, the kind of place people describe as stable, peaceful, predictable. And maybe it was for everyone except me. From as early as I can remember, there was an unspoken order in our home, a gravitational pull that everything seemed to orbit around. And it wasn't me. It was my younger sister Ashley, the golden one, the girl whose name could brighten my mother's face faster than sunlight hitting a window. If Ashley sneezed, Mom fetched tissues like she was aiding a national treasure. If Ashley brought home a ribbon, any ribbon, even the kind every kid got just for showing up, Dad announced it across dinner like breaking news. And whenever I achieved something, even something real, something earned, the reaction was always the same, polite, brief, a soft pat on the back before the spotlight swung right back where it belonged. I remember the year I won first place at the regional math competition. I was 14. I carried that certificate home like it was the most fragile thing in the world, terrified the corners would bend. Mom didn't even look up from the laundry basket when I laid it in front of her. "That's nice," she murmured, then added Ashley's volunteering at the hospital today. "Isn't that wonderful? She's making real impact." Real impact. Those two words became the measuring stick she used for everything. Saving lives, caring for people, having a purpose, and apparently nothing I did, even if it kept our actual lives functioning, qualified. But I kept going. I worked early mornings at a coffee shop through high school, rushing from school to shift to home, where I would still study until my eyes burned. In college, I took on 3 jobs tutoring cleaning offices, restocking shelves, because our bills didn't pay themselves. And my parents never asked how I managed. They only asked when the payments were due. Some nights, when I stayed late at the cafe, I'd wipe down tables and imagine what it would feel like to be seen. Not celebrated, not even that. Just seen. But I learned to live with the silence. I learned to survive inside it. Years later, when I got into Stanford for my MBA, my advisor cried harder than my mother did. She just nodded, murmuring something about Ashley's rotations in the ER, as if my acceptance was a minor footnote in Ashley's ongoing saga of excellence. Still, a small part of me believed things would change, that maybe success at that level would finally tilt the scales. And for a moment after graduation, I let myself hope. I chose Seattle because it felt like a clean start, a city built on ambition lit by glass towers and rain-soaked determination. I thought maybe coming home with a Stanford MBA and a consulting offer in hand would make them proud. Maybe they'd see me for who I had become. I didn't know the dinner at Delmonico's would prove just how wrong I was. The week after graduation felt like a blur of congratulations from people who had actually witnessed my work. Professors who'd mentored me, classmates who'd pulled all-nighters beside me, coworkers who knew how many deadlines I'd carried on my back. For once, I let myself believe that maybe this time my parents would meet me halfway. Maybe they'd show up not out of obligation, but pride. So I booked the private room at Delmonico's, a place I'd only ever walked past on my way to cheaper meals. Crisp linens, soft gold light stemware that sparkled like it had never known a fingerprint. I covered everything: the food, the wine, the room deposit. It wasn't extravagance, it was me trying to build a bridge I still believed could exist. My colleagues arrived first, warm and chatty, the kind of people who ask about your dreams like they're rooting for you. My manager shook my hand and whispered, "Tonight's yours. Enjoy it." And for a brief moment, I forgot the heaviness lodged in my chest. Then my parents walked in. My mother's heels clicked like she owned the place. My father's expression carried that familiar blend of polite indifference and calculated distance. They came empty-handed, no flowers, no card, not even a soft congratulations. If they were proud, they hit it with the precision of surgeons. Still, I greeted them with the smile I'd practiced for years. polite, controlled, hoping. Introductions began my manager, my professors, classmates who genuinely liked me. Compliments followed in easy waves. "You must be incredibly proud of Claire," one professor said. "A Stanford MBA isn't something you stumble into." My mother's smile thinned. "We're proud of both our daughters," she answered lightly. "But Ashley, she's saving lives in the ER. That's real impact." Her voice coated the words with a sweetness that felt like poison on my skin. Another colleague chimed in, trying to steer things back to me. "Claire carried our whole intern team last quarter. I don't know how she does it." My father chuckled, actually chuckled. "She's clever, sure. But what Ashley does, that's meaningful work." The conversation died. Forks hovered midair. Even my classmates who barely knew the dynamics felt the temperature drop. I forced myself to breathe through the embarrassment, smiling until my cheeks ached. But inside, something was cracking, not just from what they said, but from realizing how rehearsed it seemed, how effortlessly they dismissed me, like they'd been waiting for a chance to redirect the spotlight. Then my manager stood to give a toast, gentle, thoughtful, the kind of praise I never expected to hear spoken about me. My chest tightened as he said, "Claire is one of the most capable young consultants I've worked with. She's destined for great things." The applause washed over me, and I turned toward my parents, just needing a glance, a flicker, a spark of pride. Instead, my father leaned back and murmured, "Compared to a doctor." It doesn't measure up. Something inside me shifted, like a floorboard finally giving way after years of strain. And then, in one effortless breath, my mother delivered the sentence that would split my world open. "You know, sometimes I wonder why Claire takes things so seriously. Ashley never causes this kind of drama." I felt the room tilt. I didn't know it yet, but I was seconds away from hearing the words that would unravel everything I thought family meant. When the words finally came, they didn't come as a shout. They came softly, almost casually, the way someone might comment on the weather. "I wish you were never born." For a heartbeat, I didn't register them. The room felt too bright, too quiet, too still. Then the meaning sank in, sharp and cold. My mother wasn't just frustrated or tired or being dramatic. She meant it. She said it with the same ease she used when ordering coffee. A fork clattered somewhere near the end of the table. Someone gasped. My throat tightened, but nothing came out. I felt every pair of eyes on me, waiting to see what the sensible one, the quiet one, the one who always swallowed everything, would do next. Instead of crying, I simply pushed my chair back. The scraping sound cut through the silence like a blade. "Excuse me," I managed, though my voice felt like it belonged to someone else. I didn't look at my mother. I didn't look at my father. I didn't even look at my manager, who half rose from his seat as if to follow. I just walked out, heels hitting the hardwood floor in sharp, uneven beats. By the time I stepped outside, the Seattle night wrapped around me like a curtain, cold air catching the edges of my breath. Rain had begun to fall, not heavy, just enough to blur the city lights into streaks of gold and blue. I stood there on the sidewalk, the sound of distant traffic humming in my ears, and for the first time in my life, I felt completely untethered. Not free, not yet. Just severed. I didn't cry. I thought I would, but nothing came. Nothing. Instead, there was only a numb, echoing exhaustion, one that had been building for years, maybe even decades. Every memory flashed by: the forgotten birthdays, the laundry basket congratulations, the financial obligations I carried without question. Suddenly, all of it felt unbearably heavy. By the time I reached my apartment in Bellevue, my blazer was damp and my hands were shaking faintly. I kicked off my heels, sat on the floor in the dark, and stared at the blinking router light like it might tell me what to do next. My phone buzzed 11 missed calls from Mom and Dad and a single text. "You embarrassed us." "I hope you're proud of yourself." Proud. The word twisted in my chest. Proud was something they never felt for me, but expected me to feel for them. Something inside me gave way, not with a snap, but with a quiet, steady shift. I opened my banking app. 3 automatic transfers waited in the queue: payments for my parents' utilities, Ashley's tuition, and the lingering portion of the family mortgage. For a second, my finger hovered. The old version of me, the one who lived on obligation, fought to breathe. Then I hit cancel. 1, 2, 3. Each confirmation clicked like a lock turning. The silence in my apartment changed. It wasn't empty anymore. It was peaceful. The next day, Michael showed up with takeout containers and a bottle of wine he pretended not to care about, but clearly did. "Just checking if you're still alive," he joked gently, stepping over the pile of books near my door. I sat on the floor again this time with him beside me, steam from the food rising like an anchor pulling me back into my body. I think I said slowly, "I'm done." He didn't interrupt. He didn't tell me to reconsider. He just nodded, eyes soft. "About time you saved yourself for once." Something steadied inside me. For the first time, I wasn't drowning. I was surfacing. 3 weeks passed without a single word from my parents. Not an apology, not an explanation, just silence. The kind of silence they had always demanded from me, except now it was pointed back at them sharp enough to cut. And strangely, I didn't miss them. Not the way a daughter is supposed to. I missed the idea of them, the version I kept trying to invent so I wouldn't feel alone. Letting go of that illusion was painful, but also clean. Work became my refuge. The restructuring project I'd been assigned swallowed entire days whole, but I didn't mind. For the first time, I wasn't pouring myself out just to be overlooked. People listened when I spoke. Clients deferred to my judgment. My manager handed me responsibility like he trusted me to carry it because he did. And when a local business magazine asked to feature the project, I said yes. I didn't mention my family in the interview. I didn't have to. The journalist said she wanted to highlight resilience, how you grow when the ground underneath you keeps shifting. When the article went live, my inbox filled with messages from strangers, people who had endured parents who only loved the version of them that stayed small. Their words felt like breadcrumbs on a path I didn't know I was following. But quiet is never permanent, not in families like mine. On a Tuesday afternoon, I came home after a 12-hour day, exhausted, still in heels, blazer slipping off my shoulder, and found 2 silhouettes through the frosted glass of my apartment door. For a moment, I thought it was a delivery. Then I heard my mother's voice. "Claire opened the door. We know you're there." My stomach dropped. I didn't move, not because I was afraid, because I no longer owed them urgency. When I finally opened the door, they swept inside without waiting for an invitation. Like my home was just another thing I maintained for them. My father took the couch. My mother paced once, then faced me with tight, brittle anger. "We need to talk," she said, "about Ashley." Of course it was about Ashley. It always was. My father folded his hands stiffly. Her internship ended unexpectedly. There were cuts. Her tuition balance is overdue, and if it isn't taken care of, she'll be asked to take a leave from the program. I didn't sit. I didn't blink. And my mother snapped, "We need your help." The audacity landed like a slap. They hadn't shown up to apologize. They hadn't shown up to ask how I was, or why I walked out of that restaurant, or what they had done to cause a fracture big enough to swallow our entire relationship. They came because they wanted me to fix their favorite daughter's life again. When I didn't answer immediately, my mother's tone sharpened. "Claire, don't be petty. Ashley is your sister." I laughed, short, bitter, not amused. "I paid her tuition for years. I covered your bills, the mortgage. I worked myself raw so this family didn't fall apart. And you stood in that restaurant and said you wished I'd never been born." My father straightened. "We were angry. You made a scene." "No," I said, stepping closer. "You made the scene. I just walked out of it." The air thinned between us. I could feel something inside me settling, solidifying into clarity. "You're our daughter," my mother said, her voice rising. "Family is family." I exhaled a long, steady breath. "You don't get to play that card now." Her eyes flashed. "Claire, you're being unreasonable. I cut her off. I owe nothing." My father's face reddened. "We raised you." I shook my head. "You didn't raise me. You drained me." The words hit harder than I expected, maybe because it was the first time I'd ever said them out loud. My mother froze. My father's jaw clenched. For the first time in my life, they looked small, like two people standing in front of a truth they couldn't control. I walked toward the door, but not to leave, to open it. I held it wide, letting the hallway light spill into the room. "If you came here to apologize," I said quietly, "I'd listen." They said nothing, not a word. "But if you came to ask for more," I looked each of them in the eyes, steady and unshaken. "That conversation ended the night you disowned me." My mother scoffed, crossing her arms. "You're making a mistake. You'll regret this. Someday you'll realize you need your family." And that was the final shift, the moment everything in me aligned. A clarity so sharp it felt like breathing for the first time. I stood tall, taller than I'd ever felt in my life, and said the words I never imagined I'd have the strength to speak. "Consider me as if I never existed. Live your lives as though there was never a daughter named Claire." They went still. My father's lips parted. My mother's face blanched. The entire room, the tension, the air, the space between us froze like someone had pressed pause. They went silent, and for the first time, I wasn't the one shrinking inside that silence. I nodded toward the doorway. "It's time for you to leave." My mother hesitated, searching for some angle, some leverage she no longer possessed. But there was nothing left to take, nothing left to control. She turned sharply. My father followed slower, like a man walking away from a fire he didn't expect to spread. When the door finally clicked shut behind them, the quiet that filled the apartment wasn't empty. It was mine. In the days that followed, I waited for the familiar ache to return the guilt, the second-guessing the instinct to fix what wasn't mine to fix. But it never came. Instead, there was a strange stillness inside me, a quiet I'd spent my whole life chasing without knowing it. Work surged forward. Our project closed with results far beyond forecast, and when the client renewed the contract, my manager pulled me aside with a smile I hadn't seen directed at me since childhood. "You're ready," he said, handing me the leadership contract I had fought for without realizing it. This time, I didn't question whether I deserved it. The article went viral. Messages poured in from strangers who had grown up invisible like I had people who whispered thank you for saying the words they couldn't. Reading their stories felt like standing in a room lit by faces I'd never met but somehow understood. One night, I stepped onto my balcony, the Seattle skyline pulsing softly beneath a layer of mist. I thought of the girl who spent years trying to earn love from people who refused to offer it freely. She was gone now. In her place stood someone steadier, quieter, but undeniably whole. On my last night of that long, unraveling season, I stood on my balcony with a glass of water, letting the cool air settle against my skin. Seattle glimmered below a scatter of lights reflecting off the bay like the world was quietly resetting itself. For the first time, I wasn't wishing for my parents to call or hoping for an apology that would never come. I wasn't rehearsing what I'd say if they did. I was simply breathing steady, unhurried, finally free. Maybe I was never the daughter they wanted, but I became the woman I needed. And if you've ever carried the weight of a family that couldn't see you know this, you are not alone. Share your story in the comments, and if you want more stories like this, hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one.